Good morning. We'll call to order the meeting of the Story County Board of Supervisors. Today is March 15. Please stand if you are able and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we move to adopt today's agenda, there is a correction to make just on the agenda itself under consent for the consideration of purchase of equipment. There's a scrivener's error. It's actually 428,000. Which one?
Item number 7.
Number 7.
Okay,
Sorry. 400,000 to 428,649. The supporting documentation is correct.
So 400, not 28,000, but 428,000.
428,000. With that, I would entertain a motion to adopt today's agenda with the corrections.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Evans.
Aye.
Cecil, aye. Now it's time for public comment number 1. This comment period is for the public to address topics on today's agenda. If anyone would like to step forward to the microphone, make public comment, please feel free to do so. Or if you are on Zoom, you can raise your hand or use *9 on the phone. No one step forward to the microphone. We'll close public comment number 1 and move on to agency reports. The Access's annual report. Good morning, Tess.
Good
Yes,
morning.
yes, it's so nice to see so many people here in person. Just want to say that too.
It's great. It's great. Well, hey, good morning, and thanks for taking the time to hear from Access and for your continued support of our agency. I brought hard copies. I don't know if anybody needs that. Probably not in this digital world, but just wanted to highlight a couple things that I included within my report and answer a few questions that I always know that get asked in this meeting. So first off, I wanted to just always like to highlight, I feel like it's weird to be at 2-year mark of the pandemic. I was listening to the radio and they were talking about 2 years, but I always wanted to highlight where we are. In general, somebody could access any of our services in any of the pre-pandemic formats. So in-person has been back up and rolling for over a year now. So that's really great. And I think we've seen a lot of successes moving and pivoting those services back. The other thing that I would just say is most of our services can still be accessed virtually or remotely as well. So we still offer an all virtual support group, video counseling, phone-based counseling, all of those options for people. So really people can make the choices that are best for them. One thing that I think is really important for us as an agency to be talking with a lot of our partners, including partners like the Board of Supervisors, is in the last year, we've experienced a lot of staff turnover. We're like a lot of agencies in this state and in this country who've experienced that. And that was really acutely felt for us in May of last year. And so the big theme for us in this fiscal year has been hiring and onboarding. And I think that's worth noting that it was most acutely felt here in Story County. That's where we saw the highest turnover across our service area. So we have a lot of new advocates on our team. And last summer and into the last fall, we were rebuilding. We were really triaging some of our care. And so when you look at our service hours for this year, some of that meant that in the summer, it was a lot of really basic care for people. And that's not where we want to be as an agency. I think that was what it had to be for that moment. But we obviously want to get back to where I think in the past, Access has a legacy of providing really robust care for survivors. And that's what we want to be at. I think we've hired a great team and I think they're getting there. We've really got a lot of go-getters, a lot of really compassionate people that I've really been impressed with how quickly they've learned their roles. So we have a whole bunch of folks who are, I think, hitting their stride, but at the end of the day, remembering that about half of our staff are 6 to 8 month advocates. And so I just really want all community partners to come alongside them see this as that partnership and helping make those services the best they can be. And so that has been interesting. It has come with renewed energy. So I think we've got one of our most creative staffs we've ever had. So they've been bringing forward a lot of things that I think are going to be fun to see come to fruition. Some new partnerships with the Octagon and some other places that I love that new energy. So positives to some new folks. The other thing I wanted to highlight, I mentioned that I think the strength of our agency from this last year has been our sheltering and homelessness services. The need for housing services right now and from the last year has been really bigger than what I think we, quite frankly, bigger than what Access can provide, bigger than what the network of homelessness providers here in this county have been able to provide. And we've been hustling and moving. We've done a lot of things in the last year to 2 years. We've rented another property, some things like that I think have helped make those services go smoothly. But I highlight that in part to just say, while we've provided a large volume of bed nights and care, rent assistance, the challenges facing folks here in Story County are hard. What it's taking to get folks into housing and to maintain their housing has been bigger. And so that's where I just want to do a bit of applause and thankfulness for the county as they considered our American Rescue Plan application. And I'm excited to see that continue because we have in the last year given out almost double the amount of rent assistance that we've had in previous years. And we have seen that need continue and the requests for that help continue. And I don't see that slowing down in the next couple months as we round out this fiscal year. So I think that is timely and critical. So big thanks for that. Happy to talk about any of the other services I highlighted in the report. The big theme I would say is just know that early in our fiscal year, we were in learning curve mode. We were in triage mode. We've seen those services continue to become more robust as the year has progressed. And absolutely, we've seen our service hours increase month over month as people have really got their feet under them. I know a question that often comes is about our claims and how we're doing on our claims process. As of our February claims will be cleaned out in almost every category, with the exception of that emergency shelter category. In February, we had some damage to one of our units and kind of had to pause using that particular unit. So it just made our bed nights a little bit lower in February, but I anticipate us cleaning that out either in March or April. So we'll be all on track for the claims portion. I think those are the main highlights I wanted to bring you. Happy to answer any questions and mostly want to pass on my thanks because I think the work that you all do and the services you support have really made a big difference here in Story County. So any questions?
I do have a question for you. And just looking through your reports, I'm a little unclear on what you've stated.
Yep.
So are you still, are you back up to full capacity? Are you still doing some spatial kind of distancing?
Yep.
Or whatever? I just wasn't sure how you're doing that. Or limiting because you're trying to be more space conscious.
Yep, great question. So throughout the last year, while we have been more space conscious, we actually took on additional rental units so that way we could have a similar bed capacity as what we had pre-pandemic. So our bed nights that we deliver in a month are on par with what we would have done pre-pandemic this fiscal year. But it is more spread out than like eventually we would need to shrink back down into that old footprint. Because you can't rent forever an additional unit. There's a real cost that comes with that.
Sure.
But great question. And I should also say, we hired back all the vacant positions. We do have an opening right now. Somebody just took a new job, but other than that opening, we're back to kind of full steam with staffing.
Questions?
No.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So how long, for your emergency shelter services, how long does someone usually stay
Okay.
in your shelter service?
Really good question. We have a goal. Currently, I will say this, in the last 2 years, it's been a bit of a lofty goal, so it's not been a realized goal. But we always keep a mantra of an average length of stay of 30 days, but we're really survivor driven. And so somebody, when you say an average, that means there might be somebody who stays because they just need 2 nights, and you might have somebody who stays for 2 months. Right now, our bed average is closer to 42, 43 days. And I think there's been a lot of reasons for that, but some of the things that we've noticed is some landlords have been more nervous about taking a risk on somebody who doesn't have income, for example, and just a more limited range of landlords that we can work with and have housing availability. We've seen also just that the pandemic has contributed to the trauma that people are experiencing and their resilience in bouncing back and getting on their feet, just taking a little bit more of a momentum shift. And there's just been a lot of, I'd say, complicated reasons why some of that has extended. Yeah, but we work with each survivor that comes in to create a housing plan and kind of really drive the timeline from there.
And then how many units do you typically have?
Mhm.
And then you said you have 1 extra unit right now?
So we pre-pandemic, we're an 18-bed facility. It's a little bit funky now because it's like I'm trying to match apples and oranges, because what we've been doing is limiting 1 household per bedroom, which is just a different sort of thing. So right now, we have 4 properties here in Story County and 1 over in Marshall. Pre-pandemic, we had 3 here in Story and 1 in Marshall. Something that's also shifted is we moved to a bigger unit over in Marshall County. So we went from a 2-bedroom unit to a 3-bedroom unit. And then at different points in the year, we've also done some hoteling, which has essentially functioned like an additional apartment for us because it's been a long-term hotel stay. Yeah.
So you have an actual shelter facility?
we-
still?
Yes and no. So think of our shelter as a series of apartments. And so it's like putting people in those sorts of series of apartments, but using that as a shelter location. Yeah.
So when you say facility, you don't mean like all in one place?
Yeah, not all in
Okay.
one place. It's again, a series of apartments. Yeah. Good question.
You mentioned Marshall and Tama in your report. Are you still providing services in Boone and Green as well?
We do. Yep.
Any other counties?
Nope, just those 5.
Okay.
Yep, great question.
Thank you. And what I know a long time ago, you used to use private residences, particularly in Green County,
Mhm.
as an option. Does that happen anymore? Do people basically open their doors to survivors, or have you seen, is that kind of a?
We don't currently do that. I think that there are some churches locally that have at times done some of that, but we have not done that as an agency, not in the recent past.
Thank you.
I do appreciate where you say in your report that no survivors ever turned away without options for safety. Can you talk to us about the challenges that presents? Because we know there's a finite amount of space for people and resources for people. So when you have someone who you're at capacity, how do you go about making sure that person isn't turned away?
Yeah, I think that's a heartbreaking thing, just to say this out front.
Sure.
In general, sometimes the options aren't great options. And I think that's worth, I think as a community, all of us acknowledging. Some of the first things we do is we start every call for shelter, whether they actually are, if we have a bed available or not, with diversion, because it's always better that somebody not be homeless than be homeless. So some of it actually is front running that conversation even before the potential of an intake. So it's conversations like, do you have friends or family that would be safe and good for you to go with? Because I would rather pay for a bus ticket to go, live with your sister, if she's great and stable and supportive, than have you be homeless. And so it's a lot of that kind of problem solving about their own personal network first and foremost. And then if there really isn't that sort of network to support and catch them, then we might be, if they can't come into our shelter, we might be talking about other things like technically, the regional provider for Story County is actually an agency up in Fort Dodge. We don't receive state money to do that regional domestic violence shelter services. So that's our first, our first and best partner is to work with that program out of Fort Dodge. But we really talk about where it might be an option that they, we have a list of domestic violence shelters in the state, and really just talking about calling them to see if they're available. You will be completely unsurprised to hear that just like we have had a lot of demand for service, so have they. And at different times in the last year, a number of those programs have had to actually pause services because of staffing or issues around COVID outbreaks in their facilities and ability to maintain. They've moved from hotels. I mean, it's really been shifting landscape statewide. And so at times that's meant that safety net outside of Story County for people to go to has been also quite limited. And not everybody wants to, uproot if they've got a job or their kids are in school. They don't always want to leave. So if that's not an option, then some of it is the next best option, right? It's figuring out, maybe it's going to a non-victim service shelter. So maybe it's connection with the Bridge Home here locally. We've had a lot of success partnering with the Bridge Home. And at times it really is making just hard decisions about what do they want to do. One of the things we also talk about is just because you don't come into our shelter services, it doesn't mean that you can't access some of our other services. So let's say somebody made a really, really hard and heartbreaking call that they were either going to stay where they were, or they were maybe going to choose to sleep rough, something that would be a really, again, heartbreaking decision, but they might choose that that's the decision for them. They could still work with an advocate, still receive rent assistance. So we would still work with them to hopefully end that experience of homelessness or housing instability, even if they aren't coming into our shelter services.
I was just thinking about the change that has taken place in the last couple of decades in how victims are offered shelter. And we used to have the one physical standalone shelter, as you know, here in Story County. Some communities still have it. Others, like what we're doing here, have more of a distributed kind of, smaller units. Do you feel like you've been able to adequately address the needs in Story County with the more distributed housing? Does that work? Does that work for survivors? How do they feel about that, and how do you staff feel about that?
Yeah.
It's been quite a while.
It has been. I think that's another big conversation, but I would say my couple cliff notes, I was actually talking with the director up in Fort Dodge, and they, through the pandemic, have also been, they still have one big brick and mortar shelter, but they shifted to one family per bedroom. And just, it's been a really interesting conversation about like, how do you move closer to survivor dignity? There's that lessening the traumatic experience of homelessness in and of itself, of coming into our facility as a traumatic experience. And I think the scattered site model for some survivors has that, right? Like, instead of feeling like I'm taking myself or my child to a big institution that is communal living, a whole bunch of people who are not their best selves into a communal space is hard. Or I'm bringing my child, like, honestly, many of our families end up being the only family in that apartment unit because they're big enough that they fill it. And so that's a really different experience of homelessness. And I think we haven't been able to study that as an outcome, but I just feel like intuitively that has to matter. That said, I do think there's a couple things that we struggle with. So our sites are, they're not staffed sites. There's a staff available, but there's some survivors where that's not a fit, and I would specifically name human trafficking survivors. We've seen really struggle in our shelter facility. It is a different level of fear and security issue than what we've seen with the vast majority of domestic violence survivors. Many domestic violence survivors find a lot of success in our shelter program, but human trafficking is really tough. And I think that is worth us keep diving into how do we make that better.
So maybe a more supportive
and then again, you know, it's numbers, then how many do you have, but a more supportive atmosphere for some of those folks who really have the fear because of what they've gone through.
Yeah,
See, I was a volunteer for several years in Access, and I was a shelter volunteer. And I often thought that when I saw, you know, survivors come in with a lot of kids, and it was just a totally chaotic kind of situation for them. And I thought, wouldn't they be better off in an apartment, you know,
Yeah.
as a family unit?
Yeah.
But that's interesting what you say about folks who've been trafficked, because there was the other part of the shelter, which was there were staff there.
Yep.
You know, you could call law enforcement, you know, if you saw, you know, you're looking out the window and you see, you know,
absolutely.
something going on that's, oh my gosh, we've got, you know, you could always, and I think they knew that staff were looking out, or staff volunteers, whoever,
Yeah.
were looking out for the safety of the building. So that's kind of interesting. It's how you meet those varied needs that fall under that umbrella of survival.
Yeah, I think that a next iteration or next direction to go is to actually look at across the units. Can we make maybe a unit that is a more scaled up version, right? And keep some in this kind of diffused model. Yeah, I think there's room to keep adapting to try to better meet the needs of some survivors.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And hopefully with the foul legislation passing, things will get a little bit better. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes. Finally.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
well, thank you all. Really appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Next, we have emergency management quarterly report. Keith Morgan. Good to see you, Keith.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Morning, Keith.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. I just completed a class on bomb threat management, and the information on it was pretty basic, but I would say that it is valuable information for your safety staff, and please have them contact me whenever they'd like to discuss some of that. It's procedures to make sure that you react appropriately to threats, some of which right off the bat you might recognize are not credible threats. So I offer that up to you. Starting off with our operations, the state of Iowa experienced 63 tornadoes in December. And on March 5th, we experienced another 10 tornadoes, one of which was an EF3 and the other a very powerful EF4 tornado. We've also had another Stover fire, assisted one of our communities with communications to residents about a boil advisory, and we are monitoring high path avian flu. Finally, COVID has not fallen off of our radar. We continue to monitor that situation, to track trends, to be able to predict if our county is to be impacted by any changes to that situation. Even with all this going on, I would say that our office is returning back to normal operations as much as can be expected. So we've started to work more on our planning side, and in that planning side, we're working to meet our statutory requirements to review and revise our emergency operations plans. One of those that we looked at is our Emergency Support Function 8, ESF 8, Public Health and Medical. And as a part of this revision, we formed a healthcare surge advisory group. And this group comes together to smooth communications should we have any sort of an impact to our medical system out there. And also, we've looked at how we can communicate better, utilizing our new communication systems that we have, primarily to meet the needs of a mass casualty incident. And one of the things that was clear from that planning on mass casualty incidents was that we need to interface better with the counties around us should we have what we call an MCI. Parallel with our mass casualty planning, we've joined a group that is working with other central Iowa counties to develop a system to better share our medical resources during a disaster. We've also reviewed our hazmat plan, ESF 10, and there were minimal changes to that plan. Another planning effort was to utilize an Iowa State student to facilitate collaborative continuity of operations planning for the Story County and the Ames animal shelters. This effort recognized that these two agencies can really help out each other should there be a disaster and should one or the other facility be impacted. Moving on to our training, Our mass casualty planning effort led to the development of a communications training package that we presented to our fire and EMS leadership. The training was well received, and the slides used have been provided to these departments so that they can train the trainers actually now and conduct this training within their departments. The Story County Sheriff's Office has also looked into using them as a part of their communications training. We've also been working closely with Ames leadership to conduct command and control workshops for the Ames Incident Command staff. This training is more intense than they've had before, and it's pushing their staff to be more capable during a crisis situation. And finally, the office is working with the city of Nevada to conduct a basic incident command training, ICS 100, that we hope to open up to pretty much the entire county. And we look to have it both during the daytime for those that can do it as a part of their workday, and also in the evening for those that might be a part of volunteer organizations. And we'll keep you advised as to when that training is going to occur. The workday session we're looking to have during the first part of April. Moving on to our exercise activities. Next week, March 21st to the 25th, is Severe Weather Awareness Week. And I would ask the board to help out our office increase its capability to disseminate emergency information by advocating for all of your employees to sign up for our Story County, Iowa alert system during this week. Most people only use their cell phone nowadays, and to get this service, they must actively go on our website and register for our service, which can provide them severe weather notifications and other emergency notifications. With your help, our objective is to get all Story County residents signed up for this service. Additionally, on March 23rd at 10 a.m., we're going to have this statewide tornado drill. And it's a perfect time for all Story County facilities to test their ability to receive severe weather warnings through hopefully a weather radio and to execute their severe weather response plan. I'd say it's also a good time to test how the new intercom system can be utilized during severe weather to make sure to activate these processes and also ensure those that might be visiting our facilities get notification of severe weather. Our office will be using the tornado drill to evaluate outdoor warning sirens within Story County. The dispatch agencies have indicated they will activate the outdoor warning sirens as a part of the drill, and we've asked each community to check to make sure that their sirens are activating properly. On the operations side, we are contracting for 3 different projects at this time. One is a COVID after-action review to examine emergency management processes, how well we executed those, how well did we interface with the other agencies. This is not a public health after-action review, it is a after-action review for our office. We are also contracting for exercise support to conduct a multi-jurisdictional command and control exercise in 2023. We look to have Ames activate their incident command structure, us to activate our EOC, and we've even had the state of Iowa signed on to this. And we're going to look how well we can pass information between these 3 entities, pass resource requests back and forth, and to appropriately act upon them. And finally, we're contracting for a consultant to help us revise our county hazard mitigation plan somewhere between 2023 and 2024. This plan is necessary for our communities to be eligible for hazard mitigation grants. Looking forward, training and planning is our focus over this next quarter. That basic incident command training for our jurisdictions, and we'll be also conducting advanced command and control training in Ames. We still need to revise our emergency support function 6, which is mass care, to include sheltering, and ESF 11 ag and natural resources. Very important now that we have high path avian influenza within Iowa. We are continuing to work on establishing a process to quickly collaborate with our non-governmental agencies to collect financial donations and distribute them to those with unmet needs during a disaster. The tornadoes of Madison County highlight why this is an important capability for our office to develop and to implement. On the operations side, we will continue to monitor severe weather, the drought situation, which has not completely disappeared, and high path avian flu to speed our reaction to any of these disasters that might occur. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
was wondering if it was, if we figured out why the alarm in Maxwell didn't.
I haven't heard whether that has been solved or not. I know that they are still doing an awful lot of testing because that system is somewhat tied to our VHF pager system. That's why this test is very, very important during the when we activate all the outdoor warning sirens. This will be a major test because sometimes when we activate more than one siren with the old system, there used to be interactions between them, which would cause problems with activating them. So we'll be checking to make sure, again, we need the support of our communities to have somebody out there to actually identify that their siren activated properly. If they don't, then it's a process for us to work with the communities to hook them up with, for most communities, the Story County Sheriff's Office, because the communities own the sirens and the Story County Sheriff's Office owns the system to activate those sirens. It might be one side, it might be the other side as to why they don't activate, but working together, they've in the past been able to identify what the cause is and to work to correct it.
What can we do? What can the board do to help you? What would you like to see us doing?
Right now, the main thing is that training that is needed. Your support for our Emergency Operations Center is very valuable. A key thing is you have a COOP-COG plan, a continuity of operations, a continuity of government plan. The next step is to move on to develop that emergency action plan for you to support a response out in the unincorporated area. You have a unique command and control structure, having a board of 3. You interface with other entities that you don't directly control, that being fire and indirectly the sheriff's office out there. But yet you still have some pretty important areas, some high density, actually, residential areas. And also, should we have a train derailment out in the county that involves hazmat, that is something that the Board of Supervisors and the county government would own. That is one of the most important things to clarify how you as the leadership for the unincorporated areas will react to an event like that. Any other questions?
I have questions. I guess I kind of do. I noticed you have it at the end of your report here. The stuff is just the watching out for the bird flu and stuff. I'm assuming that you're getting as much data that you can. So some preparedness, should we see some sort of outbreak here in Story County? I think they had to put down several birds in another county. So it's
Yes, and unfortunately, the data I have is fairly old, but our main threat is the turkey population that we have, about 200,000. The process for something like that is very regimented. There are implications outside of the county should an event occur. The way that it typically occurs is that the state veterinarian will work with Homeland Security. We will get a notification, us collectively, that there has been an event, and then they put it out by a press release. Now, most of the work is done by the state veterinarian's office that will go to that facility. They'll establish a quarantine area around there. One big change is that previously, during the last bird flu outbreak, the USDA took the lead on the depopulation and disposal of those, that particular site. That is now shifted to the producer. They found that the producers actually were much better at doing that sort of stuff. The webinar that is going to be on Thursday is going to explain that process a little bit more, but that does shift a lot of that activity to inside of the county. We would support resources. The lead for it would be IDOL's, the state veterinarian's office for that.
thank you.
I was wondering, we really focused when we think about avian flu on the large producers, the 900,000, something like that. I wonder if people with backyard flocks have enough information, and if there's any information that might be good to get to them.
backyard flocks are, as a matter of fact, one of them in Potawatomi County was a backyard flock that had occurred. And yes, we do. And that's something that I'll take down, and we'll try and get it out on our Facebook site on how to protect their flocks. Biosecurity is the big effort, and the large producers have much more established procedures to protect their flocks, but just awareness that the threat is potentially from just the migratory movement of birds back and forth. Having their flocks outside does increase the risk of a backyard flock. And also, what are the symptoms of high path avian, so that they can recognize them and get somebody out there to confirm or to identify that it is not, and then take the steps
That's what I was
afterwards.
thinking, 'cause I know several people who've got backyard flocks or small flocks just around the area where I live.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking, do we really get information out to those folks? Because they're not in the usual, you know.
That's a good suggestion, and we'll use our Facebook presence as one of the main efforts. And also, we can probably send out an email to at least the jurisdictional executives, the commission essentially, to try and push it, because they're occurring in the cities now also.
Right. Yeah, that would be excellent. And I was gonna do the webinar Thursday, but another meeting in the morning, so I can't go to a meeting with Keith and Granton in the afternoon to kind of get a little bit of some background on that. So I didn't want to share, you know.
This is just one of the foreign animal disease outbreaks. We're still monitoring the African swine fever to make sure that we have proper preparation should that migrate. It is North America now, which is fortunately it's in one of the Caribbean islands, but it's still a threat to definitely to the economy in Ohio.
They are in Haiti both have it, right?
Say again,
Dominican Republic and Haiti.
that's the area that, if I remember.
I was just wondering, has IDOL's turned over the responsibility on swine flu to producers as well, or are they still maintaining a rule?
You're talking if a facility would be infected?
Yeah.
Yes, that is my understanding. That's the process that'll be utilized.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of your work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Next, we have consideration of request from Heartland Senior Services for Story County financial contribution towards a new center. Leo and Pam White.
Morning.
Good to see you in person.
Exactly.
Listening to Mr. Morgan scares me more stuff around the corner.
I think
Swines
that's
and
the appropriate
avians.
response.
Yes.
That was training, and you really did.
Yeah, we've been through it. Well, to introduce myself, I'm Leo Milliman. Dr. Milliman, I'm a retired urologist, Mcfarland Clinic. Also active in farming here in Story County. And I also went to vet school for a while, so I'm tuned into what I just heard. And with me is Pam White, who's retired Human Sciences Dean at Iowa State. I'm the president of Heartland Senior Services, position that's going to be going on for 2 years. Pam will succeed me forever.
2 years.
But to all of you, thank you for letting us speak to you. I will try to be brief here, and our main purpose is to answer any questions. We have a request. We would like financial support from Story County and the Board of Supervisors. And to keep our verbal report shorter, we did send a one-page note, and I won't repeat everything that's in there. Also, we did fill out an application for the ARP funds, which had a lot more detail. I know you've all looked at that, so not to repeat it. I would like to, again, we're here to answer questions. Heartland Senior Services is a great benefit to our county and the cities within the county. Heartland, a couple key points I'd just like to stress, that the senior services in our county originated with the Board of Supervisors in 1974. The offices were in the basement of the old courthouse, I guess, or somewhere down in the basement. And subsequently, as I've reported in our memo, that's merged with others. So ultimately, we're in an old school in downtown Ames now. We've had a need for 20 years or so for a new facility to help our seniors. And we finally raised enough funds privately that we're going ahead. Groundbreaking occurred last week, or about 3 weeks ago, actually. We're having a demolition of the old school is going on now, and new construction will begin this spring. The last 2 years have been especially difficult for seniors, the most vulnerable in all this COVID that we've all read, from a health point of view and so forth. And it's difficult for the caretakers. Seniors were put in isolation, and we've learned that social interaction, like we're seeing each other today, is important. Everything communicates better when you can get out and about. In our services, we do a huge volume of Meals on Wheels at more than double in the last year or two. And we've tried to implement virtual contacts, helping our seniors connect in one way or another. Most exciting thing with this new building and new project is, to me and to Pam, and first of all, our whole board is committed and passionate about helping our seniors. My profession, I grew up taking care of little kids. I've been involved in little kids and disabilities and all kinds of effects, but I'm really passionate about helping our seniors. Maybe it's because I never realized old age came so fast for all of them. But, and I think I share this with our entire board and staff, and they need help. It's the fastest growing segment of our population, the seniors. And the facility we had was falling apart, disrepair. We've patched things. It's time to do something new, and we've started. In the new building, and I'm going to let Pam speak to briefly tell you some of the things there. Most importantly, or maybe not most importantly, but increasing technology to deal with their seniors and virtual connection to rural people so they can connect back, maybe without having to come into a center, that we can just simply use the word Zoom or virtual to connect with people. The new center, we choose to not use the word for old people or seniors or that, but we've chosen a brand 60 forward, vibrant. We're still going to maintain the Meals on Wheels, which we work with the hospital. We deliver those all over the county. But new visions, make it a fun place to come. There's going to be Pam, I'll let you talk to this, hobby center and so forth, a bistro in there, so you can, for the caretakers to stop and have a cup of coffee or a quick visit, so forth. And most importantly to me is to coordinate things. We don't want to duplicate everything that's already being done in other places, but maybe we could be a center to coordinate when somebody new comes to town with seniors that needs, they want to join pickleball or something like that. We can promote, you can do it here, you can do it in Nevada, you can do it, something like that, that rather than duplicate it. And I like that idea. Most importantly, for us, we did have the funds. I share with you, we had a building planned around $4 million or so. That cost has gone way up due to COVID, supply chain issues, now inflation, Ukraine, and now bird flu and the other things. Who knows what can happen, but for that reason is why we're here. We would like Story County to be part of this project. It was started by the Board of Supervisors. We do serve all of Story County and its cities. And a big thank you. Our board is volunteer, and all those people who deliver hundreds of Meals on Wheels are all volunteers. Just makes me feel good. So Pam, would you like to mention a couple of things that might be in the new facility?
Right. Well, I think Leo mentioned most of the important things with regard to the request. The idea, of course, is to have a senior center that is for everyone from all socioeconomic backgrounds. The concept that Leah was talking about, we actually have a name for, 60 Forward. And so again, expressing the vibrancy of what we want this new center to be able to look like. And of course, in addition to doing the adult day center that currently exists and the Meals on Wheels, which I think importantly, Leo stressed, has about doubled since the pandemic and has not gone back down again. And those Meals on Wheels, for example, are distributed fairly proportionally to the population of the areas within all of Story County. So it really is a fairly equal distribution of those who are getting Meals on Wheels. So what we'd like to do with the new building is expand some of the programs that are already existing and provide the county with new ones. And these programs would include enhancing areas of physical activity, health promotion, nutrition, and also providing opportunities for helping our mental and emotional health of seniors throughout the year. And we'd like it to be a very stimulating, exciting place to socialize throughout the year. We would host large groups, small groups, and also hopefully have some cooking demonstration classes. We would have an area that we'd be able to do that within the new facility. Some fitness centers. We have a room that we would dedicate to fitness, but also be flexible for other opportunities. Everything has to be multi-purpose in order to get your money out of the area that you have. And as Leo mentioned, state-of-the-art technology. Right now, this center is, as you might well imagine, being the age of the building is, absolutely not up to the technological needs that we have in today's society. So enhancing the technology would also then allow us to expand programming through, as again, Leo mentioned, something like Zoom programs where people who truly cannot get out of the house are able to connect, and as much as you can through enhanced social interactions, improve the quality of life for everybody throughout Story County, particularly those 60 forward, but also the care providers for those individuals to have those kinds of chances. So that virtual center, I think, would also be really wonderful to be able to expand those services at the same time. So the fitness activity, we have, as I say, one room that where this activity would take place. It would particularly be welcoming for people who are 60 forward, many of whom are reluctant to go to some of the current facilities because they're 60 forward and they don't want to participate with the 20-year-olds. So that would also be a place where we could do yoga, strength, cardio training, all those kinds of activities. And in general, it's just expand what we have, improve what we have, and just make it a vibrant center for those over the age of 60, with 60 forward being the main.
I think with it, Pam, we hope to recognize and what we're calling a wall of honor for the many people who have been previous clients or just friends of Heartland, to recognize them on something inside. And we'd sure love to have the Board of Supervisors of Story County as part of that, because it all started right here. Do you have a quick picture of the potential?
Yeah. In the drawing.
Just to show you, we have a,
This is an architectural drawing, which is probably going to be subject to some additional changes, but we do have this concept so far. And within the building, in addition to a dedicated adult day center, which is extremely important for that population because of the safety and health requirements that you would need for the type of client that is there. We also would have a room for duck pin bowling, something to bring the seniors in, and a room that we would call a hobby room, which all would be flexible for gathering people with similar interests to be able to come to the center at a certain time to share their interests. So this provides the, and again, you can't see this exactly. After next week, we probably will have an architectural drawing that we'll be able to share because it will be more complete. Within the main lobby area, there would be a bistro. And this bistro would be open for the public. And again, perhaps bringing in gatherings of individuals who might be doing other activities, or might just be, hey, I know a place where we can stop and have coffee. It's over here at the bistro at Heartland Senior Services. And offices, a kitchen then associated with the bistro, and a multi-purpose room that would also be rentable, available for any particular service. It wouldn't have to be just 60 over. Yes, Linda.
Were you providing congregate meals there?
Yes, that is still the idea, is to be able to, yes. Just as they have been doing until
They're continuing to do
Yeah.
that. Okay, I knew you did some time ago, but I didn't know if you were continuing to do that.
it just stopped because of COVID, and that would continue.
I think we're open to answer any questions. Tried to give you a brief survey here. Ms. Linda, you betcha. Go ahead.
Okay, first, current location, you're demolishing the building. What's the square footage of the current building? What's the square footage approximately of the new building?
The new building's 14,000 square feet. Deal with the current building.
It's about the same,
Yeah.
actually, except it's usable,
Yeah, it'll be 14,000 square feet of usable space.
usable space.
if
And
you're-
it does include outside, like, outside, you could go outside to sit on a deck or, during good weather, things like that, that are incorporated with this. Sorry, Linda.
That's okay. Your timetable for construction, you said you're starting to take down the old building now.
Yes,
How are you gonna be, and your construction is 22 and 23 calendars. How are you gonna provide services, the adult daycare, for instance, in particular?
we've
Good
already,
question.
good question, and, we've had to address this before we even started, but the adult day center, we've worked in agreement with Green Hills. That is taking those folks, we do 12 a day. They're not always the same 12. That's our maximum right now. We would like to do more. COVID basically shut down everything, so a lot of the in facilities we couldn't do, but we do have an agreement with one or two churches in their basement that is open. That is going to allow us now to open up some of these festivities if they are for some of our seniors. And partly seniors for me is taking care of the caretakers too. It's a terrific burden for caretakers. So like this ADC, there's a lot of concept here that you drive up, you leave off the client who needs to go to the ADC. The caretaker can stop, have a cup of coffee. That ADC has to be in a separate isolated facility, like Pam said. And to me, I've learned a great deal. There's experts know how to care for those folks, and they love coming. And anyway, I'll shut up.
I'm concerned about caregivers too, and I think
Yes.
that's one valuable service that you provide. Just something about myself. My husband and I were the primary caregivers for my mother for 20 years before she went into residential care.
Uh-huh.
And she lived out on farm. It's not that easy to get the services for the people who live in rural areas. And we're looking at the county here. I hear you talking about you can do some things virtually. Yes, you can, but you're still talking about some in the older generation who aren't very good with that.
I'm one.
You've got the added thing about out in rural areas. We're getting better on our broadband, we're making some progress there, but still there are a lot of places where people are living out on farms, mostly older people, who don't have decent broadband. And you said it when you started, how nice it is to have communication in person. I would really implore you not to just say, we're taking care of the county virtually. If people can't come to us to a location in Ames, they'll get Meals on Wheels. Maybe if they can prove to the US Postal Service that they can't get down the driveway to get the mail anymore, they can, like my mother did, get the mail and to bring it, or the mail carrier to bring it to their home, which was a good thing because it was somebody else to check on somebody
Yeah.
out there.
I'm with you.
But,
We're with
those are brief, Meals
Yes.
on Wheels people are moving too fast.
Yeah.
The postal carriers, they have to move too fast. They're not gonna sit and talk to somebody in the home. I'm wondering how you're gonna provide some social stimulation in person to folks who cannot get to your center. Because sometimes, and my husband and I were in this situation, we were full-time employed during the time we were helping my mother. So to say, well, you can, you can head out there, you can pick up mom or dad, you can take them, you can take them back. You're talking a couple hours for a kid. So I'm saying, what other things can you help provide out in our smaller communities now in the unincorporated areas? Because you said a very good thing in your ARPA request, about how loneliness
Yes.
is one of the things that really helps, with contributes.
One thing
to
we've
really
done, and again, shut down because of COVID, is outreach.
Yeah.
We're doing more and more to, part of the Heartland folks is to go out to homes, just like you're saying,
Mhm.
and help them. I can share that I don't know how many, but many seniors, we taught how to use their cell phone, how to turn it on,
Mhm.
how to get on a computer so we could, but anyway, it's called the outreach program, where instead of bringing people into nursing homes or whatever, they can stay at home. Now, this has to be developed and we need the technology to be able to do it. But that is part of our mission, at least from my point of view. As a board like you are, we set policy. I can't implement everything, but that I can assure you is, I'm right with you, one of our policies to try to do this.
And maybe to add, during COVID, one of the services was calling these individuals regularly,
Yes.
particularly either to the individual or to the care provider. How are you doing? Connecting, having some kind of human connection. And this was also a way to make certain that individuals were doing okay in their houses, a double check, since there was not that the ability to meet in person. And also-
Coordinate,
and coordinate, that's right. And you mentioned, Linda, the importance of having the Meals on Wheels individual to come. And we need to make sure we don't underestimate the importance of that, because the person does not leave the house until they have communicated with the individual to know that that person is okay at that particular moment. It's not as good as having 24-hour care, but it is someone connecting every single day when they go there.
It is.
And we did have a couple episodes that our Meals on Wheels folks got back to us that saved lives,
I saw that.
the contact, so. And this is, again, policy and development.
I would just encourage you to think about how you might be able to coordinate with some of the community
Yeah.
agencies
Yeah.
in our other communities. I know that, if you could have an exercise program in Nevada, since they're gonna have a really nice facility here at some point. Huxley and Story City both have recreation
Yeah.
programs and facilities, and if you could have some, help get some things out there rather than have everybody come, that might be closer.
Mhm.
And I just know that transportation, out in the rural areas becomes just a huge thing for seniors. When it's like, maybe they feel like they can drive downtown in their own community, but do they want to come to Ames? And do you want to come to Ames?
If we can do that, I
Seriously.
want to do it too.
Yeah, I would be
And-
really, really interested in like the, whatever outreach, you working with ours from PSI, you said you would have them, you were gonna offer to co-locate them. Is that a deal? Is that gonna happen, or?
That's the hope, that's right.
That's all. We got to get going
And-
first.
But you
And
make a very
yes.
good point. The coordination is part of the plan. And
Mhm.
so the coordination should include all of the communities within Story County, not just in Ames. Absolutely, it needs to include all of the communities. And there are a number of areas where coordination continues. Of course, the Meals on Wheels is a program that involves Married Relay, because they make the food. Heartland Senior Services coordinates all the volunteers and the pickup, et cetera. And
And
that's
the-
one
That
example.
was a good improvement, by the
And a
Yep.
safety check.
Yes.
Yeah. The food's probably better than if I cooked it.
way. And I have one other question. When you came to us back in October, you were asking, you showed another 2.3 million that you needed. Have you had progress in raising that? Where are you now?
Part of that was due to everything I mentioned, COVID, inflation, so forth. And yes, we have had some private donors that have stepped forward, and we're talking to you for hope. So the answer to the question is yes. The bad part is we still don't know the exact final number. As we've met with architects and builders, no one could give us, or you, or anybody, a final number now with the way society is, and now with Ukraine and that. So, and part of it, we have to build the building, the technology, the infrastructure. Then the programs have to be supported too. And one of my little things that I've mentioned maybe to one of you or somebody, have visited a place in eastern Iowa where they had high school and junior high kids come in to help seniors learn how to, I use the word, turn on your cell phone. And it's been great to see how this developed, and I'd love to do something like that, to have our seniors communicate with younger. They become friends, and to have grandma and grandpa visit with your, what it's like, grandchildren. So maybe something like that, but I may not live long enough to get everything done, but I got lots of ideas.
Is there a fee for people who come to the center?
Some things there are, and it's gradual. There's a inventory, a need-based thing, like Meals on Wheels. Some of them pay proportionately, and we have counselors that go through that, the exact details, some of which is provided by scholarship, and some we do ask for a fee. So the programs to date have been, to my knowledge, self-supporting, with help from access and other things too. But the building, some things we just can't do the way it's designed. We did find a time capsule there, if you heard about that. I'm excited about it. I dug around and found one, and I got it. Well, I don't have it. It's sitting on a shelf, but we're going to open that probably within a month and see what's in it. And then we're going to put a new time capsule in the new building too. It's always fun to see that stuff, but
Yeah.
I love history. You have to dig it out. Sorry to bother you.
Have you a question? Mine from the city of Ames.
There are partners in this, and it is a Park and Rec from the city of Ames and the hospital, Mary Greeley, which is a city-owned hospital.
And
Wait.
the city provides the land.
Yeah, the land is given to
It's
us
given
by
us.
the city of Ames. It goes back to the history, which is there. But to go knock on their door for, at this point, no,
Have you asked the city for cash for its construction?
no.
In the partnership, the city is involved, I say, because they own the property, and Heartland Senior Services will own the building.
And we're negotiated a 50-year lease. And at the end of that, everything would go back to the city, even though we're building it with funds not from the city. But the land is, like Pam said, is owned by the city.
And that's the land that you're currently.
Yeah.
We're currently on.
With the
City's been
option,
providing it all along, so to speak.
Yeah, there was a grant, as I wrote in the one-page note. School sold the old school back in 1984, I believe. And the city of Ames purchased it with a grant, with the intent of building a seniors, of combining these senior centers. When it left part of Story or part of Nevada, it went to the basement of a nursing home over in Ames eventually. And that, if you were around, and I was during the floods, it was,
Still Riverside.
yeah, Riverside, which no longer exists. So anyway, there's been a history here that I've looked up some. I don't know everything, but I don't want to bore you with all that to this point. So, we did have the Healthy Life Center project in Ames that failed a bond issue from the city. But out of that, there's a new indoor aquatic center planned by the city of Ames. That removed it from something we had to deal with too, as it was going to be a combined thing. So now we could concentrate on just the senior center, the 60-forward center and vision.
Next question.
Yes.
When you talked about the outreach, folks, now did you have an outreach coordinator, or do you have an outreach coordinator currently, or is that something new that you're?
There was an outreach coordinator, and some of that was discontinued due to COVID.
Sure.
And I can't speak to exactly, I've talked to those people.
Yeah, but
Uh,
Shayla still does that out.
Shayla coordinates every, yeah.
Shayla Harsh.
Yeah, and I just kind of go along with what Lynn was saying too, on reaching out in the unincorporated, the rural areas in those cities. I know that you've talked to RSVP. I don't know if you've talked with Herda. I don't know if like part of the conversation with people can talk about, carpooling to come into the center, should they want to, or, are they connected with some sort of transportation so that is figured out? So that they want to come into Ames, or if you have connections with some of the other communities, they've got that ability.
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
transportation.
Right.
I agree.
That is a barrier. That is a huge barrier.
Yes.
Let me ask a follow-up. You said somebody named Shayla is the outreach coordinator. Is she doing that in addition to other duties?
Yeah, well, she has people under her that did the outreach. And again, I'm not involved with the day-to-day implementation of that, but prior to COVID, I know there was outreach and it was building. We were doing more and more of that, going to their homes, helping them do their income tax. And I know that because I don't know, then COVID hit and we couldn't communicate with people. So we couldn't go to their home to help them set up their income tax.
And I believe that includes Meals on Wheels as well as part of the outreach.
Yeah, Shayla overlooks the operations and she does have people
I
working
just think
under
it's
her.
really gonna work. It's really gonna provide services away from your physical location. It's gonna take a full-time outreach coordinator.
I wish I could, Nancy Carroll's the director and she would be able better to answer that question
Well,
than
you
I
pass
can.
that on to her, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, our concern about,
I will,
making sure we
promise.
have strong, accessible resources throughout the county.
Yeah, I think you really touched on something, Linda, about coordinating with what facilities exist in those communities already, and maybe providing some coordination there to have activities so that people don't have to go.
And
so
that is
far.
a key goal of the 60 forward is coordination. So, we can't do everything all at once, I'm sure of that, but it's the basis of this new vision. That excites me anyway, and our whole board.
And you're absolutely right. Not duplicating efforts, but coordinating efforts is an extremely important component within the county.
I also wouldn't mind if we had a conversation with the city of Ames about contributing. I think that would be absolutely appropriate.
Cash, and I guess, 2/3 of the population in the county is in the city of Ames.
And I feel like we're talking a lot about coordinating outside of Ames to provide services. I think it's totally appropriate.
Okay.
Never hurts to ask. Never hurts to have that conversation. And it's.
I think it's a very important service. And it serves an incredibly important function for families and for people. I appreciate that it's there and the work that you do.
Thank you. We appreciate you too. All of you. I think both Pam and I are available if you want to call me at home. Again, I'm a board member. I don't execute how it works, but I can.
Sure,
I
and we appreciate that. We
Yes.
totally understand that and appreciate you both coming and providing us with all of the information.
Thank you.
too. I look forward to seeing the final specs.
Yeah.
Like,
We
when
do
you get
too.
done, Yeah.
Yeah.
Which things didn't keep changing all the time. so.
Right.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My sense is that it might be good to think about it a little bit. This is the first time we've heard this specific word.
Yeah, we could bring it back. Put it back on an agenda, so that way, that way it gives me some time to review here. There were some questions that we had that we may want to follow up on as well.
So, I would need a motion. It's just a request. It's just a request. You don't need a motion. Okay. My apologies. Okay, moving on to consideration of minutes.
Approval of minutes of 3/8/22 and cancelments as well.
Moved and seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Edmonds. Aye. Basil. Aye. Consideration of personnel actions.
I move approval of personnel actions as listed.
Second. Moved and seconded. Edmonds.
Hi.
Merkin.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Consideration of claims.
I would move approval of claims as presented.
Second. Seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Edmonds. Aye. Basil. Aye. We've got consent agenda with that one correction to the agenda.
Approval of the consent agenda as with the correction that was listed at the beginning.
Seconded. Edmonds.
Aye.
Merkin.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Nothing for public hearing items. We have additional items, consideration of updated financial policies. Lucy. Martin.
Morning, board. I came for you last week with the proposed amendments to the financial policies. That was the addition of 2 appendices, so we didn't change anything in the body. We just added Appendix A and Appendix B, and that codifies processes that we do across fiscal years to make sure that revenues and expenses are attributed to the proper fiscal year. So that was in response to working with our the state auditors on our annual audit. So pretty dry stuff.
Any
I didn't get any inquiries or questions. So I don't find this particularly controversial, but you never know.
right.
So I would ask that you approve it.
You haven't changed it since we looked at it previously. The amendment
No,
just refers
I-
to-
Yes, I took the words draft off of the appendices in the back for presentation today. That's and then I updated the dates without the strike throughs. I accepted changes in the Word document, in other words. So. I don't know if you had any questions for me.
Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I would move that we approve the updated, financial policies, which have gone through 7-day.
Moved and seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Edmonds.
Aye.
Basil. Aye.
Thank you, board. You can find this on the S drive near you. So.
Wait,
Okay, next we have discussion and consideration of amendment number 1 to the Story County Provider Agreement, Jessica Martin. We have Ethan. Ethan Anderson with the County Attorney's Office. Good morning, Ethan.
Yeah, good morning, board. Good to join you. Yeah, thank you for the time. Tim, I want to bring this forward for the board's consideration. These are a pair of contract amendments to give both drawing a blank on Sherry Gibson and Jessica Martin. Kind of a raise here. We're satisfied with the job they're doing. I think they're doing a great job. And the program has been extended, is my understanding. And so there's money in the budget to kind of give them a little bit of a raise here, and that's what we're seeking to do. So that's what you have before you. It's just all the terms and conditions of the contract remain the same, but they're getting an hourly rate bump.
Do you know what percentage that increase is?
I don't have the top of my head. I think by the time you factored in for both these individuals, their currently hourly rate plus their independent contractor status with their self-employment taxes, this is kind of maybe bringing them more in line with what they would make without all that self-employment added in. So I think it's a fair raise. I don't have the percentage off the top of my head here. I could run that number real quick.
You've run this through the Governor's Office of Drug Control Policy, correct?
That's correct. We had to make sure that there was money in the budget. And so this would have been money that would have been left over in the budget that would have been unused. So we're staying within the budget parameters of the grant and making sure those funds are allocated properly is what the governor's representative did for us, which was Todd. I can't remember his name, his last name, Todd.
Jones.
Yes. So yeah, I think it's a reasonable thing to do to recognize the work these individuals are doing for the county and for the program. And we ask the board approve it.
Ethan, this is Lisa. I just have a question. You mentioned the grant. How long is the grant for?
So it was a 3-year total grant. But by the time we got the contract signed, we were at least 8 or 9 months into the grant. So there's, I think at this point, 18 months left on the grant with the extension, which would mean this contract amendment contemplates that 18 months plus an additional 40-hour week to allow them to wrap up and do their final report on the grant on what they accomplished. So it's essentially 18 months plus 1 week.
Okay.
And is this effective immediately?
Yeah, that's I believe it was effective upon signing, yes.
I think it would be great to have them come in and present to the board at some point of the work that they've been doing. And the number of people that they're serving.
I don't have any more questions.
Make the motion that we approve consideration of amendment number 1. Amendment number 1 to historic county provider agreement.
Second. Been seconded. Hens. Aye. Merkin.
Aye.
Basil. Aye.
Then I would move that we approve amendment number 1, historic county provider agreement for Shelby Gibson.
Second. Moved and seconded. Merkin.
Aye.
Hens.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you, board.
Next, we have discussion and consideration of contracted mowing services. Unbudgeted item. Thank you.
Good morning, board. You have a budget amendment request for both our current fiscal year and next fiscal year, FY '23. This is originally was a request I was going to do through normal budget work sessions for fiscal year '24, because it's something that we've looked at, because generally we do our own mowing in-house. During COVID, so for fiscal years FY '20 and '21, we did contract our mowing services out, and we were able to absorb that cost in those 2 fiscal years because of projects that got canceled due to staff shortages and a lot of other various things that COVID caused. And with our project that's coming up at the Justice Center for HVAC replacement, that has been delayed because of equipment lag times getting equipment, which that particular facility, even when we have contractors doing the work, there is a heavy load on the facilities department because of access restrictions for contractors. So we still have to have personnel who have to remain in the certain areas while the contractors are working. So we have to focus on things that we can do inside. And when we get into the heavy mowing season in the spring is where that becomes cumbersome to accomplish, because we just don't have the staff to be in that many places at once. So that brings me to bringing it forward. As you can see, I kind of broke it out based off of the multiple budgets that facilities management has. So that's why I tried to break the costs out. So when you see buildings grouped together, that's because those are handled under that particular budget as far as costs. As you can see, just when you take wage and benefits for our facility staff to perform the mowing, that is what we would pay out in wages. And I listed it that way because there's a lot of times we have projects that we don't do in the summer, and we end up hiring them out because our time is spent mowing. Well, in lieu of paying our staff to mow and contracting out labor at anywhere from $80 to $100 an hour to hire a contractor, I feel that the staff time would be better suited to do the projects they're capable of doing that are more skilled versus mowing. And these prices are these costs are just for mowing. It's not general lawn care. We will still handle our own weed control and landscaping projects in house. This is just for strictly mowing the grass. I used a 4-year average because our last couple of summers we've been pretty dry. So I used the 2 previous summers where they were more typical, and one was a little bit wetter than a typical summer, and then used the contracted services we used in FY '20 and '21 and got updated pricing because of fuel costs. I knew the cost would go up. So the anticipated contracted mowing services costs were based off of current rates on that 4-year average as far as times mowed each month, because they bill us in per property per mowing. It's not just how many hours spent. It's each property has its own designated thing. Everybody quoted it. We ended up getting 3 different quotes for the mowing services, both in we did it previously and then here recently to and then use that as average amount of times that we would mow in a month. We consider our mowing season April to November, because it generally starts about the end of April, runs through about the 1st to 2nd week in November. There's lawn cleanup included in that, getting them, debris, leaves and stuff in the fall, and sticks and that kind of stuff in the spring.
So the breakup that you have here with the 15,650 for FY '22 and the 15,560 for FY '23. The FY '23 just covers the fall. Are we going to need to look at this again in the spring?
Well, the thing with, because for FY '23, That was part of this. I just hadn't got to it yet.
Sorry.
There's projects we already have in our budget request for FY23 that we were going to hire out. Well, those, if this goes through, that is about $19,000 worth of funds that would be freed up because we would do the facilities management staff would do that
Okay.
project. So that would cover
Okay.
the spring portion of FY23. That makes sense?
Yes.
You're really just looking at calendar 22.
Yes, but since our fiscal year starts on July 1, yes, it's confusing, but you're right, Latifa, that would, normally if there wasn't those projects that we could redistribute the funds to the appropriate budget, then yes, that's why I'm only asking for.
Yeah, that makes,
So
Yep.
that makes
that
total
makes
sense.
sense. Your funding is for 2 fiscal years, but you're looking at it in the calendar year.
Correct.
2022.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Mhm.
That was my question too. So, are you done?
Go ahead. I got more, but you might ask something that I was going to talk about.
Justice Center, $19,000. That's a lot of grass.
It's a big
We're
property.
looking at climate action plan.
Mhm. And I've
A
got,
lot of gas to mow that.
mhm.
Have we talked before about talking possibly with Joe Quaker about whether some of that could be put into native perennials?
What we run into is the city ordinance on height of your lawn.
You're kidding.
That is the realistic of it. They have city ordinance that restrict the overall height that your lawn can be. The things that I am looking at, and Latif and I have talked about this a little bit, is solar, and that's a good property that we could potentially do a solar project at, because there's a large portion of it that has the well field underneath it for the geothermal system that we can't really build anything on, but it's in the works. It's part of my,
Well, and then maybe we could, some of the solar gardens.
Mhm.
Just put beds
Mhm.
for native grass and flowers.
yes, and they're a flower bed. It's not a lawn. Mhm. There's things to look at, yeah.
How tall can flower bed be?
It's not a lawn, so I mean, I don't want to speak for this
Right.
city's ordinances,
Right.
but there's things that I read into them that, say that we might have options. I'll word it that way. Yes. I gotta remember where I was. Yeah, and then,
Sorry.
no, and then part of, as you can see in the cost I laid out for facility staff to do, I included, because fuel costs are rolled into the contract mowing estimates. And then you look at seasonal equipment repairs. And the equipment that we use for mowing is the same equipment we use for snow removal. So we still have to keep that equipment, but where the equipment gets beat up and the hours get put on it is mowing. So we can extend replacement on those, an estimated about 5 years at about an estimated annual cost savings of $6,100, because the equipment will last a lot longer than what we currently. Because right now it's based off hours is when we replace our equipment. As you can see, our Justice Center facility is our biggest lawn, so we rotate it so that they all, so that we don't have like 2 or 3 pieces of equipment they use all the time because they're at one location. We rotate them through. So that, so yeah, I mean, basically it's $43,979 to mow with our own staff, or $31,293 to. That way we can focus on more projects that we have the skill and capability of performing. We just sometimes can't do them because we don't have the time. And we have some that are scheduled projects for FY24 that we will do in-house if we continue this, because the plan is this will be a permanent operation. Other ways we've looked at it is in years past, we have used summer help to perform those duties. Ran the numbers on that. What we run into is a lot of the summer help applications that we get are generally high school students. We're under the age of 18, so we are limited on how we can utilize their time. And so we still have to dictate staff time to coordinate them, basically hauling the equipment from location to location. And then some of the facilities, like the Justice Center, they just can't work inside because they're under the age of 18. And that still a lot of facility staff time spent coordinating it. It just doesn't end up saving us anything in the long run. That's why we stopped doing it. I think it was probably 2004, 2005 was the last time the facilities management utilized summer help.
Run this by the auditor's office.
I've talked with Lisa Markley informed her that I was going to be here doing this.
I figured you did.
Yeah. Yes, and if it was approved, I would work with her to, because the request is, I just gave total dollars requested, but I would have to work with Lisa on which budgets give what, how much, because it's spread over essentially 6 different budgets.
Just to make it simple.
Yes. Thank you.
Nice to see it using our staff's skill level in a better way and saving the county money at the same time.
Yeah, I try,
That's
just
good.
look at it. And like I said, it was something I was going to come in FY24 because I didn't quite have everything pieced together for FY23. We were in budget work sessions for that, but given the Justice Center project, really kind of need to bring it forward because that looks like it'll really start to get busy in June. So it'll be chaotic if we have a wet spring.
Make a motion that we approve contracting mowing services for, what is it? $31,300.
Seconded, Heavens.
Aye.
Okay.
Hi.
Basil? Aye.
Thank you.
Next, we have discussion and consideration of resolution 22-66, Kimberly Farm Agricultural Subdivision.
This one should be pretty straightforward. It is an ag subdivision. It is just south of the city of Collins. If you're familiar with Landis Cooperative, it's 3 parcels just south of the cooperative and adjacent to Highway 65. The applicant, Chad Schneider, he is on the Zoom call. He's the attorney representing the landowner. It's in the A1 agricultural district, and you can see the other districts listed there. Next slide, please. Location, I've got it, it's in the southeast of the county, again, just south of the city of Collins, and they did put this before their city council as well in December. Next slide. So those are the subject properties. None of them are full 40s. There are a few different parcels already carved out. Of course, Landis Cooperative to the north there, and then the 2 smaller parcels. The one in the middle has a dwelling and then a cattle operation on it currently. And then the one furthest south, I believe, is a dwelling, and then they have some timber on the property. Our understanding from speaking to Chad Schneider is that the current property owner would like to sell a couple of the lots being created through the subdivision to one of those adjacent landowners so they can extend their cattle operation onto the adjacent lots. So it will still be in an ag use after the subdivision if approved. Agricultural subdivisions do not allow for any sort of development, including dwellings. So you could have a barn, ag structures, certainly, but beyond that, you could not have any sort of development out there. So it does restrict the type of land use. Next slide. So proposed division, lot 1 is 8.88 net acres. That's the one kind of to the north. of the parcel in the middle. Lot 2 is to the south of that parcel in the middle, just 3.35 net acres. And then lot 3 would be the largest, and it'd be the remainder of the current row cropped areas to the west there. That'd be lot 3 over 72 net acres. And so you can see that kind of straightens up the row crop lines for who's going to farm, lot 3. And then lot 1 and lot 2, I believe, will be purchased by an adjacent landowner to use either for cattle or continuing with row cropping as well. Next slide, please. So applicable regulations in county code. Again, as already mentioned, these cannot be for development purposes, just for ag purposes. No land set apart for any open space, streets, alleys, parks, what have you. Has to lie wholly within the A1 district, which it does. And no other residential or minor subdivisions have been approved for the parcels, which they have not. This will be the first subdivision for these. Next slide. Interagency review comments. We did route this when it came in towards the end of 2021. Because the lots are off Highway 65, county engineer said any new access points would have to be approved by the DOT. Story County Environmental Health had no concerns. Again, if there was a structure put in that was going to generate wastewater, they would have to take a look at that, but really they're not for development purposes. And the assessor would of course review lots 1 and 2 once they're sold and all that. So next slide. No comments were received from the public, mailed out notices on March 3rd. So I have not received any comments from any neighboring landowners within a quarter mile. The city of Collins did vote to approve this ag subdivision at their December city council meeting, and we do have a copy of that resolution. Next slide. So the analysis here is pretty straightforward. The goal is again just to create lots to sell to a neighboring landowner, make that easier to do. Lots will remain in agricultural use. Again, no development allowed. We did note for the attorney and the property owner that there is floodplain on lot 3. So of course our floodplain ordinances do require or apply to any sort of grading or construction that would happen in that area. This told 24 parcels located within a quarter mile, 17 of which based on aerial imagery are being used for ag production. All of them are A1 agricultural except for the parcel with land is cooperative, which is zoned A2 agribusiness, and just 6 parcels within a quarter mile contain a single family dwelling. Next slide. So our recommendation, planning development staff would recommend alternative number 1, that the Board of Supervisors approves resolution number 22-66, the agricultural subdivision plat of Kimberly Farm subdivision as put forth in sub 21-00006. I'll take any questions. And again, Chad, the applicant, is on the Zoom call if you have questions for him.
So most of the ag land associated with these 2 residents is being transferred, sold to the agricultural.
Right.
Use, the landowners.
Right. So
does
those
that make them residential? Do they have to be zoned residential then?
No, so zoning districts and tax assessments are completely
Yes.
separate. So
Yeah,
the
yes.
assessor's office will just look and see if there is, my understanding from talking to Dave about other cases, is they would look at what the ag uses are on the property. So if there is an active ag use, my understanding is that they would be assessed.
It's similar to separating the farmstead.
Right, so yeah, those dwellings will still be there. Those existing parcels will still be there. It's just creating smaller lots next to them to be used for ag purposes, yeah. So
Did you say that's for cattle expansion or?
that's our understanding, yes, is to expand the cattle operations outward. Yep.
And there were no concerns from conservation, or I believe the report says somewhere that there's a natural resource area.
Yep, there is mapped. We do have on the C2C plan maps a natural area. I believe it's because there's grassed waterways in what will become lot 3. There's no timber on there. I mean, there's floodplain, but no creek is actually on that property. So we did not receive any comments back from conservation.
Okay.
So.
I would move approval of resolution number 22.66.
Second. I'm sorry.
Moved and seconded. Merkin,
Aye.
Hedden,
Aye.
Basil, aye.
Thank you.
Andrea.
Andrea.
Your reports are always so thorough. Thank you.
I guess that delays what happens in there. 4 a.m.
Yeah. Next, we have departmental reports, information technology quarterly report. Good morning. It's still morning.
morning.
It is.
Just barely.
Just
morning.
barely. Good morning.
Lots of things to learn today in the meeting. I've been up here for a while because of COVID.
Yeah, it's nice to have such a full room.
So I submitted my report and how I do this, I usually do just talking points because I don't feel that you want me to come up here and just read something. So I've listed, briefly some of the projects we're working on, and then I'll ask for some questions. I appreciate questions. As you know, we're implementing a managed print solution through Marco, the vendor. We're doing it month by month, and the reason it's being spread out so long is because hardware. We are really having trouble getting copiers, especially in. A lot of times the top of the copier will come in, but not the paper trays. So we're implementing them as we can. The sheriff's office has been completed. Tomorrow, we're going to HSC. I'm going to install the copiers there and animal control. And then we'll come to the admin building most likely in April. So we're trudging along. And as we're moving through this, it's a good thing. It's kind of spread out because we're adding more as things change. Planning and development and health have split. So now there's the need for another printer. So, I always try to look at the glass half full. So there are benefits to being spread out like that. The paging systems for the admin building and HSC have been completed. There was an additional training piece, but as I showed everyone in the managers meeting, it's just a one-page document and you press one button and talk. So I thought maybe as we move along, we're going to be working on a paging policy and then deciding who makes the page, where the devices are located. And as Linda brought up, there's a lot of good information in that red book that we have that Todd worked on. So we'll try to incorporate those together. So that's exciting to have that behind us. So as a result of this, now we'll have paging at the Justice Center, the admin building, and HSC. Primarily, we picked those 3 buildings because of the floors. For instance, engineering and conservation are all one floor. And there is paging through the phones for them. So if we want to proceed and include those buildings in the future, we can. We did not budget anything for that this year. Website refresh. This has been an interesting project. We've got a lot of different personalities involved and a lot of different ideas. We've been working on this since August. The vendor has been very, very sympathetic to us changing our mind or seeing something that they display and deciding that's not quite what we were looking for. So the last review was submitted 2 weeks ago, and I expected to see something yet this week as to, they're hoping it's the final revision. So we'll see. And after we approve then this final revision, we'll be able to see what it looks like on a phone. It'll be mobile rather than just a picture. So that's exciting. And then there is one training day left, and that'll be March 23rd. We don't have an agenda for that. What the trainer is looking for from us is what we want her to go over. So I'll send out a reminder this week to the employees just to ask, what do you want to see in this training? Because I've had a lot of questions. When is it going to be? What are they going to talk about? And I said, you guys are making up the agenda. So we have that.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? So that last training, is that for the, so we've got kind of 2 things going on with the website right now.
Correct.
We've got the
Correct.
skin refresh, and then we have the inner workings. This one on the 23rd, is that the last one for the inner workings?
So
Or-
this is, So we contracted with them for 3 days of training. The first two, the trainer met with the individual departments to help them clean up their pages and give them tips on better navigation for their site and showing them other examples and things that were industry standard. So that was the first 2 days. And everybody had homework. This might be checking back and answering questions on homework, but there'll also be, we've had some turnover in the individual departments as to the staff that handle their webpage. And there'll be some refresher, you know, how do you do this? How do you do that? Just basic. And they do have Civic Plus University, which has some good training videos that I want to make sure everybody's aware of too, and have her show us that.
But the final day on the 23rd, that's for updating your pages and that's not the skin.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Network administrator, as you know, network administrator, last day was March 5th, and so we are without one. The job posting has been up since the 21st of February. We've had 2 internals and 1 external applicant, so I'm keeping it open. Just a couple more weeks. I'd like to see a variety of applicants to interview. I'm a little discouraged by the low number of applicants. It is usually kind of a tough challenge to get IT people here in Nevada. There's a lot of competition, City of Ames, Des Moines. So we'll keep plugging away. And in the meantime, I'm trying to handle Kyle's duties. It's been a little like, why did I get this email? Oh yeah, he told everybody, oh, just contact Barb if you need anything. So I've been struggling and getting through it. So hopefully we'll get somebody in that position soon. Another thing we're working on some audits for the FBI, and this is for the CJIS system, which is the Public Safety Network. They do an informal audit every 3 years, and then your name goes in a hat, and then the FBI decides to come on site. So this time we're the lucky people, and they are going to be on site the last week in March. So we've been working with dispatch and the jail and IT, trying to go over the 26-page questionnaire, making sure we have at least answered the questions to the best of our ability. And there's also a lot of policies they want to take a peek at and make sure that we're handling everything correctly. I think we're in pretty good shape. The last time we had to do this with somebody on site was in 2014. So it's a little bit of a refresher for us. And it's not something you fail. They'll just find some things that you need to improve on, and they'll let you know, and they'll write up a synopsis, and you'll follow through. So we're struggling, but we're getting through that. You know, and the biggest thing is finding documentation that was signed in 2014. Sometimes that's a challenge.
Are they going to be looking at cybersecurity type issues as well, or?
You know, a lot of the questions, and Joel can confirm this, a lot of the questions on their questionnaire were IT related, and as far as security, and just making sure if there's a policy that you're following it. You know, why have a policy if you're not enforcing it? So a lot on security and where the data is stored, how it's transferred, who has access, things like that. Some of the networking projects we've been working on, we just completed a project with the City of Ames firewall install. So just a little background on that. The City of Ames shares our Tyler real estate software, and they access the system through a connection to our server. Just the way things are, we wanted to provide another layer of security so that we knew who was coming in and when. All the security formerly was on their end. So now we have it on our end too. It was a really simple process. There was one reboot. We worked with the staff there and the city's assessor's office, and they were all able to get back in and get what they need. So I felt that went a lot more smoothly than we thought it might. We were a little scared as to what might happen, but we're working with some good professionals. So we worked with IP Pathways on that. Heartland. We did perform a network upgrade to Mcfarland. There were some issues when they would have more than 4 people on a Zoom meeting. It was really slow, and we discovered that they did have a 20 meg connection, I believe, and we were able to up it, double it as In fact, this was through the Colo phone company. That's who, well, they call themselves CIB, Central Iowa Broadband. What we struggle with at Mcfarland, and Hickory Grove is part of this too, is there's not a lot of options out there as far as connectivity. So they are paying a little more than we do here simply because of that. But Mike said that he would let me know if they still encountered any issues with latency or slow bandwidth. And so far they've been pretty good. And they do a lot of video and, you know, they really utilize that bandwidth. So I'm glad we were able to do that. Just some random things. We are looking at options. We had some questions about Microsoft 365. It is quite a challenge, and the migration, you don't just flip the switch. It's something you plan for. It involves a licensing review. It involves network increase in bandwidth and between the different buildings as well. And we've done, Joel has done quite a bit of work on that if you have more questions. We're reviewing quotes for the courtroom renovation for Story County. They want to do, I believe the state did some upgrades in the second floor courtrooms, and now the county attorney wants to do that in 1A and 1B down on the first floor. So I have that included in my budget for next year, but as I mentioned earlier, with hardware being 6 to 8 months out, it's probably a good idea to start getting quotes right now if we want to do that in the next fiscal year. And in the room we're in, we're looking at options to improve the video and the camera and the microphones in this building or in this room. So we did, I put that on the ARPA funds and then it was taken off. And then I had it for next year's budget and we moved it up to this year and we added a camera. So when I went back to the original vendor for an upgrade to his quote, it went over the 25,000 threshold. So then I was looking at other options or other quotes to compare. So we have been working with Heartland on that. And I also reached out to a company in Ames, haven't heard anything back from them yet. But Heartland then provided us a quote, but then things changed and I confirmed with Latifa last week, what exactly part of the room do we want to capture? So we are meeting with them again this afternoon to update their quote. She did advise me that once we finalize that, and I'm hoping to get it on the agenda next week, depending on how quick their turnaround is, but she said even once the quote is signed, it's a 4-month lead time minimum for cameras. So it's a struggle, really. And then just the last thing I wanted to go over, the CICS, I don't even know what you would call it, separation from Story County. We're meeting again this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon, I guess, with the Floyd County IT and then Franklin, sorry.
Yeah, thought that.
Yeah, I get my apps mixed up on that. But we're meeting with their IT group to go over some of the things that we need to do and what other counties are doing and what they need so they can get connection to their new group. So, and that's all I had. Did you have any questions, Board?
Migrating to Microsoft 365. Did you budget money for that?
We did not. We do not have a final cost on that.
The IT group that's working with ISAP has some, I think, has some really good folks involved in it. Do you coordinate with them or do you talk with them?
We do. The ICIT ISAC group has what's called a Slack channel.
Mm-hmm.
And Joel's in that all day, every day. I'm sometimes, but what it is a think tank for all IT in the county. And, you know, if somebody has a question, then a lot of them chip in and provide responses, answers, tips, things like that.
They were talking about Microsoft 365 last week, and this is something I was kind of surprised, but I didn't realize there's a For the cloud, there's a business cloud, there's a government cloud.
Yes.
Correct.
And
Yep.
said that it's very important you get involved, you get connected to the government.
Yes, you
cloud.
have to. Yeah.
You have to.
Yep.
Okay, you're way.
Yeah.
on top of that.
It's like
Okay.
HIPAA and CJIS stuff. You have to have, the data has to reside in the continental United States. So that's the big difference between government and business. Business can float between like EU or Canada or the United States, depending on where the cost is cheapest, but government has to stay in the US. So,
They were very saying Microsoft 365 is a great product. It's just amazing, you know, what it can do for us. So glad that you're looking at it.
It probably won't be in this next renewal, which is in June, simply because it takes a long time to prepare for it.
How long is the renewal for? 1 year?
It's a 3-year contract. You can get out after 1 year. If you stay with
Well,
Microsoft.
right. And
If
we,
you
in that-
transition to a different platform.
Okay.
they would be willing to renegotiate the contract based on a change in license. What's that?
Because you're staying. with
Yes,
Microsoft, you're not
correct.
Going on.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
just changing the relationship, basically.
Yeah, we also did a lot of, there were a lot of questions about password security
Mhm.
and moving to a multi-factor.
We have that in
multi-factor
next year's budget.
Yes.
Yeah, because
That is
that's
correct.
come up on our cyber insurance and a lot of counties have moved that way.
So that we are going that direction.
Yes,
right?
yep.
Okay.
And as far as the 365 question, I mean, if that's something the board, that's the direction you want to go, there's some other expenses in there that you have to look at before we get to that point. So there might be another meeting you want to have on that.
Absolutely, yeah.
A working session.
Yeah.
on that, So
Yeah.
we get more information.
Nothing insurmountable. You just need to make sure that you've got your communications infrastructure in order, and that's an additional cost and stuff like that.
Yeah, I appreciate knowing.
Yeah. and
Yeah.
Joel has,
No, I just said, I'd like the
Sure,
bigger picture
Sure.
Yeah.
of what it is we're looking at.
sure.
I'm not the technology person, so think that we have to take into consideration
correct.
would be helpful.
And where we want to be and why we want to be there, and maybe that's not a good solution. I've heard some complaints, if your internet was down, you don't have email, you don't have Microsoft Word, except you have nothing. So, we have to weigh the cost versus the benefit, and Joel has started on a very good document, but yes, if you'd like to get together and go over it in more depth, that we're more than willing to do that.
I just had one little addition for you folks on the camera camera thing.
Yeah.
When we get that quote back from our vendors and stuff, do you guys want to go over that a little bit before we? Okay. I thought you might want to see what they're proposing and make sure that fits with what you want.
Because it's
Before we-
changed a few times.
It has,
Yeah.
it has. And I think we've got a good idea of what you want, but I think I'd feel better if you guys looked at what they're proposing and had a good idea of what it is and what it's going to do for you before we signed off on anything.
Yeah, 'cause I'm not up to date on it.
Okay. Yeah, we can get that from, right now we're working with Heartland mostly, but that doesn't mean we have to use them, but we can definitely get a good idea from them, what it's going to do for you.
I think it was really helpful the day we met in here.
Yes.
and Really talked about where do we want people
Yeah, I
standing,
agree.
and how do we want
Correct.
to
I agree.
organize the room? Because that is.
And that's a
also gonna
lot of
impact the
where-
lighting.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of where we've shaped the quote from that meeting, but we still want to make sure that you guys like what we have worked with Heartland before we start signing anything and going forward.
Right, so maybe we'll plan a work session where we can talk
Yeah.
about both that and the
Sure.
Microsoft 365, just have a
That's fine.
giant IT.
As long as that doesn't
They should probably be
hold up the
separate.
camera thing.
Oh, they should
No,
be separate.
It's gonna
No.
take a long
Separate
time.
No, it won't hold up the camera thing. Because we know you guys want to move forward that as soon as you can.
Yeah, we've kind of had that on check before, so it'd be good not to hold that up until you know exactly where you're going on 365.
Right.
Information.
Correct.
Put an update.
Any other questions, board?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good rest of your day.
Me too. Moving on to other reports, nothing for other reports, any upcoming agenda items?
We don't have any right now.
Now's the time for public comment number 2, comments From the public on items not on this agenda, the board may not take any action on the comments due to the requirements of open meetings law, but may do so in the future. If you would like to make public comment, step forward to the table or raise your hand on Zoom. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment number 2. Liaison assignments, committee meeting updates, and announcements from the supervisors. Supervisor Hess, first.
Sure. I have on my calendar the sheriff's recognition day at 1, and then the Story County Conference Board public hearing this night at 5:30. Tomorrow I have at least the Ames Conference Board meeting, and that's at 5:30. That's changed from 6 o'clock to 5:30. Thursday I have aging resources meeting. On Friday we do have the tour of the mine. Yeah, and then Monday, since we don't meet till next Tuesday, I have a kind of a free mic meeting for our board meeting the next week. So that's kind of my calendar, and I'll be kind of in and out.
Both of the conference boards, the Ames, the city one tonight and, no, county tonight.
County tonight.
Good. City tomorrow night. A circuit meeting Thursday morning, I believe, and then Thursday afternoon, I'm going to meet with county sanitarian and emergency management administrator regarding avian flu webinar we need to think about for Story County. I don't seem to have anything on my calendar for Friday. Iowa Creek WMA meeting next Monday. That's it until we meet again.
And I have the sheriff's recognition this afternoon, and then the NACO Central Regional meeting right after that, and then Story County Housing Trust meeting today at 2. And then the assessors meeting, and then I go straight into a SIRHA meeting after the assessors budget meeting. And then Thursday, hunger collaboration. Friday, mental health task force, criminal justice mental health task force meeting. And then the tour of the mine.
Why don't I join you on the line too? I did that a few years ago. I'm still recovering.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but if you're claustrophobic, it's not.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. And then Monday, I've got NACO Arts and Culture Commission. That's it until Tuesday. Anything further? Entertain a motion to adjourn. So second. Seconded. Hens.
Aye.
Merkin. Aye. Basil. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.